Susan and Bertie had found what was left of Skye behind the grain barrel. They had found Isla in her nest, with a severely injured wing, sitting on an egg she had laid before her attack. They had tried to repair Isla's wing with tape and splinters of wood, but she was too weak to eat, and she sat feebly on her egg for 5 days before she passed. They had buried her in one of Bertie's tobacco boxes, next to Skye, near the edge of Epping Forest. When none of the other pigeons would sit on the egg, tainted from the feline tragedy, Susan insisted on incubating it, despite her grandfather's belief that the chances of the egg hatching were extraordinarily slim, especially without a calibrated incubator that they could not afford. Stubborn, like her grandfather, Susan retrieved a blue ceramic bowl once used by her grandmother to eat oatmeal. She warmed the bowl with water from the tea kettle to establish a good base temperature, then delicately wrapped the egg in a lightly moistened towel and placed it inside. Setting the bowl under Bertie's desk lamp, she adjusted the distance to reach the ideal temperature by using a medical thermometer, which she had tested by sticking it under a nesting pigeon. For 2 weeks and 2 days, Susan rotated the egg every 8 hours and sprinkled drops of water onto the towel to keep the proper humidity. And despite the odds of having to bury the egg next to its parents, the egg quivered early on a Sunday morning. Susan and her grandfather skipped church, pulled up chairs, and watched for 3 hours as the egg slowly cracked open. As church bells rang over Epping to release their congregations, a shriveled hatchling poked its way into the world. "Your parents and your granny would be proud of you," Bertie had said. Susan, a heaviness in her chest, had smiled and gently caressed the hatchling. It had been a miracle, but Susan knew that this hatchling still had a slim chance of survival without the aid of her parents' pigeon milk. Undeterred, she took to grinding seed into paste and feeding the hatchling by hand. Within a few days the hatchling was able to stand, unfurl its wings, and peck. 1 week later it was eating feed with the others in the loft, and Susan named her Duchess, despite her grandfather's fondness for naming his racing pigeons after remote Scottish land masses, none of which they had ever visited. Duchess had grown into something extraordinary, and it wasn't just her looks, even though her neck plume shimmered like mother of pearl. It was the bird's intelligence, or odd behaviour, as her grandfather believed, that made her stand out among the flock. While homing pigeons were trained by the reward of food, Duchess seemed to be driven by the need to understand the world around her, a strange sense of curiosity hidden behind her golden eyes. Instead of joining the group, Duchess was content to watch her companions eat as she stood on Susan's shoulder, cooing in response to Susan's words, as if the bird enjoyed the art of conversation. And even more impressive was Duchess's athletic ability. She was typically the first to arrive home after the pigeons were released at a distant training location. Bertie had commented that Duchess was the fastest to return only because of her desire to get a few minutes of Susan's undivided attention. Susan laughed, but knew there was some truth to what he said. As Susan stroked Duchess's back with a finger, a siren sounded. She stopped. The horn began as a low growl, then grew to an ear-piercing roar, tapering off, then repeating. Goosebumps cropped up on her arms. Pigeons fluttered, walls vibrated, seed in the feeding tray quivered. The door flew open. Her grandfather, a bow-legged man wearing a tarnished tin helmet, shouted, "Luftwaffe!" He grabbed Susan's hand and pulled. Susan saw the spring door closing behind her, Duchess standing calmly on the ground as the other pigeons scattered. "Duchess!" She broke her grandfather's grip, threw open the door, and scooped up the bird. Susan, with Duchess tucked into the crook of her arm, ran with Bertie toward the bomb shelter, just like they had rehearsed, praying each time that this day would never come. But they knew it was merely a matter of time. As they ran across the field and past several other pigeon lofts, the siren wailed from nearby North Weald airfield. Bertie paused as he struggled to catch his breath. He pushed up his old military helmet that kept falling over his eyes. "Hurry!" he shouted. Before they reached the shelter, the siren died, replaced by the buzz of mechanical bees. Susan looked up, swallowed, and pushed up the brim of Bertie's helmet. Hundreds of enemy bombers and nearly twice as many fighters darkened the late afternoon sky like